Daniel Carter raised his glass and smiled proudly as the grand ballroom sparkled with golden lights, crystal chandeliers, and expensive decorations. The five-star hotel was filled with wealthy guests, business partners, and socialites dressed in elegant suits and designer gowns. Soft music played in the background while waiters walked around serving expensive drinks and gourmet food. Everything about the night screamed luxury, power, and money. But this was not a business celebration. This was a birthday party for his mistress, Vanessa. Daniel stood on the stage, holding a microphone, while Vanessa stood beside him in a glittering red dress, smiling confidently at the crowd. Behind them was a giant screen showing pictures of their vacations, gifts, and romantic dinners. Many guests whispered, but no one said anything. Everyone believed Daniel was a rich and powerful businessman, and rich men often had complicated personal lives. No one wanted to question him. "Tonight," Daniel announced proudly, "is for the most special woman in my life. Vanessa, you deserve the best, and I promise this is only the beginning." The crowd clapped politely while Vanessa kissed him on the cheek and leaned into his arm. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment. Across the hall, a few business partners exchanged uncomfortable looks. Some of them knew Daniel was married. Some even knew his wife was pregnant. But Daniel never talked about his wife. In fact, he rarely mentioned her at all. To him, his wife was boring, quiet, and too simple for his new wealthy lifestyle. Vanessa, however, loved luxury, parties, and expensive gifts. She made him feel important, powerful, and admired. "Daniel, the cake is ready," Vanessa said softly, smiling. A huge 5-tier cake was rolled into the center of the hall, decorated with gold flowers and sparkling candles. The lights dimmed, and everyone began singing happy birthday. Daniel wrapped his arm around Vanessa's waist, looking proud of the night he had created just for her. Just as Vanessa was about to cut the cake, the ballroom doors suddenly opened. The sound was loud enough to stop the music. Everyone turned toward the entrance. A woman stood at the door, wearing a simple light blue dress. Her long hair rested gently on her shoulders, and one hand was placed protectively over her pregnant belly. Her face looked calm, but her eyes were serious and cold. It was Daniel's wife, Emily. The entire hall fell silent. Daniel's smile slowly disappeared as he stared at her in shock. He had not invited her. He had told her he was out of town for a business meeting. Emily walked slowly into the ballroom, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind her were two men in black suits and a middle-aged woman carrying a folder full of documents. Guests began whispering. Something was wrong. Something big was about to happen. Emily stopped a few steps away from the stage and looked directly at Daniel. Her voice was calm, but her words froze the entire room. "Enjoying the party, Daniel?" she asked. "I hope you don't mind. I came to make a very important announcement tonight." And in that moment, Daniel felt something he had never felt before: fear. A few years before the Lavish party, Daniel Carter was not a rich and famous businessman. He was just an ambitious man with big dreams but very little money. He worked long hours, always talking about success, luxury, and one day becoming very rich. He wanted a powerful life, expensive cars, and respect from society. That was when Emily entered his life. Emily was very different from the women Daniel usually liked. She wore simple clothes, did not wear expensive jewelry, and never talked about money. She was quiet, polite, and kind to everyone. She worked at a small office and lived in a modest apartment. Daniel thought she was simple and easy to control, but he also liked that she always supported his dreams and believed in him. They got married after a year of dating. In the beginning, life was normal. Emily cooked for him, took care of the house, and always encouraged him when his business struggled. Slowly, Daniel's small business started growing. He got better clients, more money, and new business partners. As his business grew, his attitude began to change too. He started buying expensive suits, going to luxury restaurants, and meeting rich people. He began to feel embarrassed by Emily's simple lifestyle. He often told her, "You should dress better. You look too ordinary when you come with me to events." Emily would just smile softly and say, "I'm comfortable like this." What Daniel didn't know was that Emily was not ordinary at all. Emily was actually the daughter of a billionaire businessman who owned multiple companies, hotels, and properties in different cities. Her father was very rich and powerful, but Emily never liked showing off wealth. She wanted someone to love her for who she was, not for her money. That was why she hid her identity and lived a simple life. Before their marriage, Emily's father had quietly helped Daniel's business through investments and connections, but Daniel never knew the money came from Emily's family. He believed his success was only because of his own hard work and intelligence. When Emily became pregnant, she hoped Daniel would become more caring and responsible. She thought the baby would bring them closer. But instead, Daniel became colder and more distant. He stayed out late, lied about business meetings, and stopped talking to her properly. Emily noticed everything, but she stayed quiet. She was not weak, she was watching, waiting, and learning the truth about the man she had married. She had married him for love. But now, she was starting to wonder if he had ever loved her at all. As Daniel's business grew, so did his ego. He started spending more time outside the house and less time with his wife, Emily. At first, he said he had late meetings, business dinners, and work trips. Emily believed him because she trusted him. She never imagined that the man she supported from the beginning would slowly betray her. A few months after Emily became pregnant, Daniel met Vanessa at a business event. Vanessa was beautiful, confident, and loved luxury. She admired Daniel's money, his suits, his car, and his growing business. Daniel liked the way she looked at him, as if he was a very important and powerful man. Very soon, their meetings turned into dinners, and dinners turned into a secret relationship. Daniel started spending a lot of money on Vanessa. He bought her designer bags, expensive jewelry, and even paid the rent for her luxury apartment. He took her to expensive restaurants and weekend trips to luxury resorts. Whenever Vanessa asked for something, Daniel bought it without thinking. At the same time, he was telling Emily a completely different story. "Business is not doing well," he would say while sitting at the dinner table without even looking at her. "I might have to take a loan. We need to reduce our expenses." Emily would quietly nod and say, "Don't worry. Everything will be fine." She stopped buying new clothes for herself. She stopped ordering food and started cooking everything at home to save money. She even sold some of her jewelry so Daniel wouldn't feel pressured about money. Daniel never asked where the money came from. He simply assumed she was being a supportive wife. Meanwhile, he was spending thousands on Vanessa every week. Sometimes he didn't come home at night. Sometimes he ignored Emily's calls. Sometimes he came home and went straight to sleep without even asking about her health or the baby. Emily often sat alone in the living room, holding her phone, waiting for a message that never came. She would place her hand on her growing belly and whisper softly, "Your father is just busy. He will change when you are born. He will love us." But deep inside, she was starting to understand the truth. One evening, Emily accidentally saw a message on Daniel's phone when it lit up on the table. "I miss you. Thank you for the diamond necklace. I love you. Vanessa." Emily did not cry. She did not scream. She did not confront him. She simply put the phone back on the table and sat quietly. That night, Daniel came home late again and said, "I have an important business event next week. I'll be very busy." Emily looked at him calmly and asked, "Is it really a business event?" Daniel didn't even look at her when he replied, "Of course. What else would it be?" Emily nodded slowly and said nothing more. But in that moment, she stopped waiting for him to change. And she started preparing for something else. The ballroom was still completely silent after Emily walked in. The music had stopped, the guests had stopped talking, and all eyes were now on the pregnant woman standing calmly in the middle of the luxurious party that Daniel had organized for his mistress. Daniel slowly stepped down from the stage, his face pale with anger and confusion. "Emily, what are you doing here?" he asked in a low voice. "This is a private event." Emily looked around the hall at the expensive decorations, the giant birthday cake, the musicians, and the guests in designer clothes. Then her eyes moved to Vanessa, who was still standing on the stage in her red dress. "I can see that," Emily replied calmly. "It's a very expensive party, especially for someone whose business is supposedly struggling. Some guests looked at Daniel in surprise. Vanessa's smile slowly disappeared. Daniel clenched his jaw. This is not the place for this conversation. Go home, Emily. Emily did not move. Instead, she turned slightly and nodded toward the entrance. The two men in black suits and the middle-aged woman walked forward. The woman opened the folder she was holding and took out several documents. One of the men spoke in a clear, professional voice. Good evening, Mr. Daniel Carter. We are here on behalf of Carter Holdings Group and Emerson Financial Corporation. Daniel frowned. Yes, that's my company. What about it? The man looked at him seriously. Sir, you are not the owner of Carter Holdings Group. The room filled with whispers. Daniel laughed nervously. What nonsense is this? Of course I'm the owner. I built this company. The woman opened the folder and handed him a document. You are listed as the CEO, Mr. Carter, but the majority owner and financial controller of the company is Mrs. Emily Carter. Daniel stared at the paper, confused. That's impossible. Emily finally spoke again, her voice calm but firm. It's not impossible, Daniel. It's the truth. My father invested in your business 3 years ago. The offices, the company accounts, your business expansions, everything was funded by my family's company. The hotel you're standing in right now is also owned by my father's company. The guests gasped quietly. Daniel looked around the hall as if the walls were suddenly closing in on him. No, this can't be true. Emily continued. You always said you became successful because of your intelligence and hard work. I never corrected you. I wanted to see the kind of man you would become if you had money and power. Vanessa quickly stepped down from the stage and walked toward Daniel. Daniel, what is she talking about? Tell me this isn't true. Daniel could not answer. He was still staring at the documents in his hands. Emily looked at Vanessa calmly. The cars, the gifts, this party, her apartment, all paid for with money that actually belongs to me. Vanessa's face changed immediately. She slowly removed her hand from Daniel's arm. You lied to me, she said coldly. You said this was your money, your company, your success. Daniel finally spoke, his voice shaking. Vanessa, wait, I can explain. But Vanessa stepped back. I don't date poor liars, she said, then picked up her purse and walked out of the ballroom without looking back. Daniel stood in the middle of the hall, surrounded by shocked guests, holding documents that proved his entire life was built on his wife's wealth. And for the first time in his life, he realized he had just lost everything. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom as the guests slowly began to whisper and leave. Just an hour ago, everyone had been smiling at him, shaking his hand, calling him a successful businessman. Now, those same people were looking at him with pity, disappointment, and quiet judgment. In just a few minutes, his perfect world had collapsed. Emily walked toward him slowly, calm and composed, while he still held the documents in his shaking hands. Emily, I didn't know, he said quietly. Why didn't you tell me? Emily looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because I wanted a husband who loved me, not my money. I wanted someone who respected me when I was simple, not when I was rich. Daniel lowered his head. He had no answer. Emily took another folder from the woman standing behind her and handed it to Daniel. These are the divorce papers, she said calmly. I already signed them. Daniel looked up quickly, shocked. Divorce? Emily, please, we can talk about this. I made a mistake. I'll end everything with Vanessa. I'll change, I promise. Emily shook her head slowly. You didn't make one mistake, Daniel. You made 100 choices. You lied to me, you cheated on me, and you spent our money on another woman while I was at home, pregnant, thinking my husband was working hard for our future. Daniel felt tears in his eyes for the first time in many years. Please don't do this. I'll fix everything. Emily placed her hand gently on her belly and said softly, I'm fixing everything. I'm fixing my life and my child's life. Over the next few weeks, everything changed for Daniel. He was removed as CEO from the company because he was never the real owner. His business partners stopped calling him. His so-called friends disappeared. Without the company money and Emily's family support, he quickly lost his expensive apartment, his car, and his luxury lifestyle. Vanessa never contacted him again. Daniel went from being a respected businessman to a man who had lost everything because of his own greed and betrayal. A few months later, Emily gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She moved to another city, started managing her father's company, and built a peaceful life for herself and her child. She was no longer the quiet woman who tolerated everything. She was now strong, confident, and independent. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel would sit alone in his small apartment and look at old photos of Emily. Only then did he realize that she had loved him when he had nothing, and he had betrayed her when he had everything. But by the time he understood the value of loyalty and true love, it was already too late. Moral of the story: never judge a person by their appearance or simplicity. Respect, loyalty, and love are more valuable than money and luxury. A person who truly loves you is worth more than all the wealth in the world, and once you lose them, you may never get them back.